Kevin Boutilier is the manager of clean energy at Halifax Regional Municipality, focusing on community energy and the energy transition. He's involved in initiatives related to climate change and clean energy within the municipality. Recently, Halifax announced a deal that accounts for about 45% of Halifax's corporate electricity and will reduce corporate emissions by 24%. This move also cuts overall Halifax's corporate strategy consumption by 19%. That's impressive numbers. So stay tuned for a great conversation coming up next. Hi, welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Maria. How are you?
That's great. I'm doing doing really well. I'm thrilled to have you. And because my very first guest on this podcast was Shannon, your colleague, Shannon Miedema. And she
Mhm.
talked about Halifax and the municipality's sustainability work that you're doing. That was almost 3 years ago. I can't believe I'm saying 3 years. But what's happened since then? I would imagine a lot has happened in the last
Yeah,
three
it's
years.
definitely been, it's definitely been expedited per se, right? It's been an exponential amount of movement, I would say, on our HalifACT Climate Action Plan. So, that was approved in 2020. And you spoke with Shannon about 3 years ago. And since that
Yeah.
time, we've staffed up quite a bit. So we've filled out our team to be able to deliver on, the very aggressive actions of Halifax, both mitigation and adaptation. So
Hmm.
we've been really moving, and we'll talk about it a bit in some further questions, but really moving from the planning stage for a lot of things now into implementation, right? So we've done quite a bit. So there's been some big announcements. We were able to sign a power purchase agreement with a company, Renewal, who is developing wind turbines down in the South Shore, and we're actually going to be purchasing a large percentage of our corporate electricity use, so the electricity that we use for our fire stations, our community centers, etc. We're moving ahead on decarbonizing our corporate fleet through electrification, and also trying to support residents as well in making that switch to a lower carbon form of transportation. With the expansion, I think, of our team has been fantastic because we've been able to also move into a lot of adaptation work as well, which is part of Halifax. It's a mitigation plan, but it's also very much an adaptation plan as well, because as you know, we're on the East Coast. There's,
Hmm.
we're going to be hit by storms. We're going to be, hit by a lot of things like that. So our
Yeah.
adaptation team is really working on ways to empower the community to bounce back a lot faster when these things happen. So looking at things like strengthening, key roads. So there's a great project on Shore Road on the Eastern Shore where they're putting natural infrastructure to reduce the storm surge when there are events, and that usually typically take out that whole road that we now have to, pay to replace. So really looking into things like that as well, to reduce those impacts of climate change.
Amazing. And there's a lot of work, there's the implementation stage where you're at. You were telling me about, there's a lot of energy that happens in recreation centers. Pools take a
Mhm.
lot to heat those large spaces that you
Totally.
have. I mean, there's a lot of energy being drawn, so you need to
Mhm.
rethink all of that.
100%, exactly. So part of Halifax, one of the things is to take leadership as a municipality, and we want
Mm.
to encourage residents and businesses to decarbonize their operations. But before asking them to do that, we want to take that leadership role. So we do have a plan in place to decarbonize our own municipal buildings. So the power purchase agreement with the wind turbines to produce our clean electricity, that's a piece of it. But we also just don't want to use as much electricity anymore. Right. And we want to make those buildings more comfortable for residents as well. So, we're looking at doing deep energy retrofits on the community centers and on the other facilities. So we're looking at increasing the insulation, the envelope, swapping out the heating system from oil or natural gas to electric, and then putting solar on the roof to make sure that all the electricity that is used at that facility is as low carbon as possible.
How has working with the utility, which is Nova Scotia Power,
Mhm.
how has the support and, been for advancing the energy mission that you want to take on?
Yeah, for sure. So the utility is, a key partner in the development of HalifACT, and they're very, very important in its success as well. Because when you look at deep energy retrofits, you get rid of oil, perhaps get rid of natural gas if it makes sense, and you electrify. The big thing is electrifying. But if the grid is not as clean and green as we would like it to be, that sort of is an issue. So we've been working with the utility and the province as well, and they do have targets of 80% renewable by 2030. So that really supports us in making the case for electrification. But when it comes to individual projects, utility has been fantastic to work with. A key example is our public charging infrastructure and our fleet charging infrastructure. But I'll talk about the public charging infrastructure just for a moment. It's fairly new for the utility. Is new for Nova Scotia. The size of chargers that we're looking to install is going to be one of the largest available here in Nova Scotia, and that requires electricity. So there, maybe a year or so ago, we initiated conversations with the utility, and they didn't really have a process in place of like, okay,
Mhm.
you're forging ahead with this, and we're kind of going to work with you to make it as streamlined as possible. So there's definitely some humps, some bumps, right? I won't lie, but they are supportive of electrification, and I would say that they're supportive if we're going to pay for it. It's a win-win for all. So we've actually been able to have a really good working relationship with the utility to ensure that the sites that we select have the infrastructure that it needs, the electrical infrastructure, but then also getting support on scoping and just kind of working out some of the designs. As like I said, it's new. The federal government has a mandate that all new vehicle sales will be electric by
Mhm.
2035, and that's
Right.
10 years away. So it's now it's time to start, right?
Ah, yeah. Well, you touched on it earlier, but the spacing, like the charging infrastructure, that's a whole beast on its own. I mean, you need to
Mhm.
probably space them apart. They need to be on municipal property, I would imagine. You have buses, you have a ferry, you have
Indeed.
uh, fleet vehicles that the staff uses to go from A to B. All that
Totally.
needs to be thought out. So, what's the
Mhm.
process behind planning all of that?
Yeah, so it's complex, and unfortunately, it would be great if I just called up the city, next door and
Mhm.
said, "All right, so what did you just do?" I'm just going to copy and paste that. But I think that's what makes this job really exciting. That gets me to come to work every day because it's another challenge. Like it would be boring if it was just copy and paste. That being said, there's a lot to think about. So when we consider our public charging infrastructure, we worked with Dunsky Consulting back in 2021 to really map out where how should we best select the locations for public charging, because we only have it's taxpayer dollars, we only have limited amount of money, we can't just go
Right.
everywhere, right? So number one is really trying to um, span the entirety of the municipality. So we're about the size of PEI. We've got 16 different districts, right? We need to consider, every resident that pays taxes in HRM, right? So typically, what we look for is, sites that we own, as you mentioned. It's a lot easier to work on property that we own rather than dealing with leasing agreements or,
Right.
we love to partner with people, but with this initial tranche, that was sort of a piece that we wanted to, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
So we look for our community centers, we look for parks, we look for areas where there's something to do for the individual that's going to charge
Hmm.
their vehicle, right?
Hmm.
Our chargers are going to be one of the faster in Nova Scotia. Some vehicles though can't take that full charge, so people will still probably be at the charger to get a full charge in 20 to 30 to 40 minutes, depending on the vehicle. So there needs to be
Yeah.
something for them to do. It needs to be well lit. We also need to look at areas that are close to highways, so that when people are coming through, going from
Right.
the airport downtown to downtown Halifax, just get off the highway for a quick charge. And then
Then there's the
also we
training
want,
of yeah. Sorry. There's the training
right?
of everybody too, right?
Well, and that's just it exactly. So when we
Yeah.
consider our fleet transition, I think this has been something that's been I'm a technical guy, so I can get the technical stuff in the ground. It might be challenging, but I can make it happen. But when it comes to the behavioral change of we've got 550 plus light duty vehicles in our fleet that we want to transition, in short order. But it's people are used to driving a gas vehicle, right? It's a bit of a change to get into an electric vehicle. So my team's not leading it, but people on our environment and climate change team are working on change management and really trying to support our operators to feel comfortable and become champions of driving the vehicle, because here in Nova Scotia, word of mouth is the best promoter of all time. So really trying to show the benefits of driving the EV, but how to also operate it optimally. It's a bit of a change. You'd have to plug in when you get back to the shop, right? You
Right.
have to maybe plan out your route so you're not overextending your range and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Walk us through like what a typical week looks like for you and your team. What you
Yeah.
guys have on what's on your docket these days?
Totally, yeah. So that's a great question. So our team is the clean energy team. So we typically do focus mostly on the mitigation actions of HalifACT. But the members on our team, it's a small team, but they definitely bat well above their average. So a big thing is our team's responsible for our annual reporting. So we've got HalifACT, and every year we have to go to council and you know go talk about how we're proceeding on all 46 actions. So we need to do a lot of cross-department collaboration to gather the updates, but also perform an emissions inventory. So that emissions inventory, it is sort of the marker of like, hey, we're implementing a lot of things. Like, are we trending in the right direction? So are the emissions going down? And they are, not
Mhm.
at the rate that I think we would like or need them to be, but they are going down. But that's quite a bit of work as well. As I mentioned, we're working on public and fleet EV charging, so working with the
Mhm.
utility and the public and so forth. We also work with our planning department quite a bit. So as they update their land use bylaws and their planning documents, we like to try and incorporate some technical language around, mandatory EV charging for new buildings, or, allowing large scale solar farms in areas where maybe it wasn't allowed before, done safely, of course.
Mhm.
Um, we're also supporting our corporate building retrofits and adding solar to those buildings. Like I mentioned before, one notable building is the Ragged Lake Transit Center. So we're electrifying the transit fleet. It's going to consume a lot of electricity. So we've decided to put about a megawatt of solar on that roof, which is one of the largest in Atlantic Canada, to serve, it won't serve the full need of the electric buses, but it will offset that.
Mhm.
And then finally, one of the big ones that's been what I started working on when I started with the municipality in 2017 is our Solar City program. It's been running for about 11 years. We use a municipal financing mechanism, which is really accessible to people in HRM, and we guide and support people in installing solar on the residential buildings. And we've financed about 27 million in residential solar, so people to be self-sufficient, protect themselves against volatile rate increases, and it's green as well. So.
Speaking of buildings,
Mm-hmm.
this province and even this municipality, there's a lot of old buildings,
Totally.
historical buildings and heritage ones that also were built in the 70s and 80s that,
Mhm.
that are heated with oil.
Oil.
So
Yeah.
how is this being, you mentioned deep energy retrofits. So how is you and your team addressing that?
Yeah, so that's a great point, and I'd say I don't have the numbers in front of me, but probably close to 50% of residents are heating with oil, right? And it's
Wow.
it's a volatile cost for heating.
Yeah.
There was also a study that came out with Efficiency Nova Scotia and the Affordable Energy Coalition that
Mhm.
about 43% of Nova Scotians are living in energy poverty, so they're paying a high percentage of their after-tax income is going just to heat their homes, right? So that's taking away from all the other things they could be doing, right?
Yeah.
Groceries,
Going out
etc.
for
Right?
dinner.
So
Yeah, exactly.
working on deep energy retrofits is extremely important. And in the climate that we're in now, and climate not meaning climate change climate, but just the day-to-day affordability is key, right? So it's not so much about the emissions, it's really about making homes and life more affordable. So I think that's where deep energy retrofits and retrofitting of buildings come in. So what our team is doing, we're looking to take our Solar City program, which is support and financing just for solar, and expanding that to the full deep energy retrofit. When I say deep energy retrofit, a lot of people, say, "Oh my gosh, like that sounds like a lot of work," right?
Right.
Really, it's not. You can get a big depth of reduction and energy savings by increasing the insulation in your home, swapping your oil furnace out for an electric heat pump, and then adding solar on your roof. So we've actually just finished a pilot program where about 11 residents went through, and for about $30,000 that we've financed through our program, people are off oil. They're saving about $3,000 per year, which
Wow.
offsets mostly their financing costs, and it to me has been a success, and we're looking to hopefully expand that, and we're also working with some other municipalities and provincial partners to hopefully set up a larger, more sustainable program in the future.
That would be amazing to
Yeah.
to extend that, because the Solar City program has been really successful. I know that it's a real near and dear to your heart as well. What
100%.
does the next year look like for you and your team?
Yeah, so the next year, there's going to be a big focus on getting this retrofit program off the ground, or at least planning out, where it is we'd like to go. For the last year, we've really broken ground in our public charging infrastructure. So we're really looking forward to, this summer when a lot of them are online, and, that's when people are out in their cars and doing a lot of road trips and so forth. So really, monitoring who's using it and how it's being used, and, planning for potential adjustments in the future. We're also looking to new and additional power purchase agreements. So the one I spoke at the top of the discussion is about for 45% of our corporate electricity consumption. But we have street lighting that we would like to offset as well. We're going to electrify our buses, our ferry, and hopefully 3 or 4 years will be fully electric. So really trying to, expand that power purchase agreement, and really just, continue implementing and seeing successes in this really, challenging but rewarding work.
Well, I know that on this podcast, I've spoken to a lot of people across Canada, and everybody would agree that Halifax and Nova Scotia are really being admired across Canada for being, if not leaders, but definitely showing a lot of initiative in the sustainability and the energy side. So kudos to you and your team and everybody out there who's really putting Halifax and Nova Scotia on the energy map across Canada.
Indeed, yeah, definitely. Big kudos to everyone on the team. Very passionate, intelligent, bright, and it's been fantastic working with everybody.
Well, thank you for joining me, Kevin. Pleasure to talk to you. Want to have you back definitely in maybe in another 3 years time, and have another update, because I know you guys are fast moving machine.
Indeed, it seems like every year there's another success, and some more stuff to talk about. So it's been great being on the podcast. Thanks so much for having me.
That was Kevin Boutilier, who's manager of clean energy at the Halifax Regional Municipality, who's doing really awesome things, and he and his colleagues are too. I want to thank you for listening today. Make sure you subscribe and visit our website at reimaginedenergy.com. This podcast is sponsored by the province of Nova Scotia, and as well, the Smart Energy Event. I'm your host, Maria McGowan. Thanks for listening today.